Hello everyone, this is Rick and thanks for joining. This tutorial is a overview of IP subnetting, specifically IP subnetting with version 4 IP addressing. And I'm going to show you a tip or a trick here to make your life a little bit easier when it comes to subnetting. So I'm going to jump right in here, and the first thing is, as far as IP version 4 subnetting goes, an IP address is represented as 4 decimal integers. So this would be a typical IP address that you would see, 192.168.1.1, real common on a home router or something like that. And then IP addresses are really 32 bits long, and so this is a decimal number converted from binary. So this 192.168.1.1 in binary is expressed like this. So you've got 8 bits, dot 8 bits, dot 8 bits, dot 8 bits. So a total of 32 bits. Okay, so how this works is you need to convert from bits into decimals. Okay, so these binary into decimals. So with that said, here's how 192 would be calculated. Each bit is assigned a value here. So you notice I've got 8 values in this table. So 128, 64, 32, 16, 8, 4, 2, and 1. And each time that you mark, it's either a 1 or a 0 here as a value. So if it's a 1, you're calculating the number. So for example, in this case, 192 written in binary format is 11000000. And what that means is you calculate the values of 128 and 64, anything with a 1 associated with it. 128 plus 64 is 192. Okay, subnet classes are divided up into different classes, and they're really, Class A would be very large subnet space. Class B is very common, and Class C is what's used in most environments, or assigned to individuals or corporations to use for internet advertisements or whatever. So this is just a real quick guide overview of showing you the ranges that are within those classes. There are also reserved subnets for private use, that can be used by multiple corporations or individuals on internal networks. Okay, the other thing is there's other classes not listed here that are reserved for things like research and multicast addressing and things like that. So we're not going to get into that here though. So you've seen lots of subnet mask, and you hear subnet mask referred to in many different formats. So you could have one labeled like this, 255.255.255.0. Or you might see it labeled as a /24 or a 24-bit mask, and then this is the mask laid out in the 24 bits in the binary format. So you've got 8 ones, dot 8 ones, dot 8 ones, dot all zeros, and so that represents a 24-bit mask, which represents this number here. And how that works is, if you look at all these bits are marked as ones. So if we go back to our table here, and we would have all ones across the board here, we would have to add up all these associated values: 128, 64, 32, 16, 8, 4, 2, and 1. That comes out to 255. So that's when you see this 255.255.255.0. That's how it looks in a binary format, and that's how someone might represent it if they're just showing you the number of bits in the mask. Okay, so that's what the /24 means. 8 bits, 16 bits, 24 bits, and then these will be the host over here. Okay, so subnetting tips and tricks. What I want to do is show you a quick and easy way to find subnets, and this comes in really handy without having to use a calculator and so forth. So, sample question that you might see: what is the subnet address, first usable address, and the broadcast address for IP address of 168.5.12/26. Okay, or they might list out the mask, 255, 255 dot, and so forth. So what do we need to do here? The first thing we need to do here is step 1, determine the decimal subnet mask /26. So how do we do that? We calculate 26 bits here. So we have the 8 dot, 8 more bits, dot, 8 more bits, and now we're at 24 bits. Now we need to fill out 25th bit and 26th bit, and then all zeros after that. So how that comes out, as we know, if all 8 bits are 1s, that's 255, 255, 255, dot, and then if we look at these 2 bits, that's 128 if we refer back to the table, and that's 64. 128 plus 64 is 192. Okay, this is the trick I'm going to show you on the next page. What we're going to do is take the last decimal here and subtract it from 256, and that's going to give us 64, and this number could be 224, it could be 240, whatever the case is. You'll see how this will work here in a second. So what do we need to do here? We need to calculate the subnets. Okay, so how we calculate the subnets, and the subnet is different from the individual IP addresses. The subnet is the main subnet, and then you have hosts within that subnet. So how do we do that? We subtract 192 from 256. 256 minus 192 is equal to 64. So we know that subnet are in the ranges of 64. So this is how you use this little trick here, is you do 256 minus the last decimal value of 192, or whatever the appropriate decimal value is, and that'll give you the ranges of subnets. So 64. So our original subnet was 192.168.5.12 was our host address. So our subnets are 192.168.5.0, 192.168.5.64, 192.168.5.128. So we're incrementing by 64 every time. And then finally 192.168.5.192, and then we stop there, because if we want another 64, that would equal .256, right? Not a valid number. 8 bits can only tally up to 255. Okay, so finally, in order to figure this out, we need to calculate our subnet, our first available host, and a broadcast address. So again, these are our subnets that we've calculated. And remember that our initial host was 192.168.5.12. That can't be, so what you can do is look at the subnets that you have available to you, and you know it can't be on this subnet because .64 is a higher number than .12. It can't be on the .128 for the same reason. So it has to be on the .0 subnet. So if we look at that, 192.168.5.0 is our subnet. What's our first available address? It's always the first number after the subnet. So in this case, 192.168.5.1. And then what's our broadcast address? It's always the last host before the next subnet. So in this case, it's 192.168.5.63. And you see the next subnet's .64. So we can do a what if scenario here real quick and say, what if the initial IP address was 5. I'll change it. Let me change it real quick. 5.112. Okay, so now our subnet would be in between a 64 and a 128. So this would be our subnet, 64, and our first available would be .65, and our broadcast address would be .127. Okay, so that'll work if you're doing 256 minus 240. You know what, you can use that in many different scenarios, and I hope this helps you. I don't know if if you're studying for the CCNA, this is an easy way to to learn your subnetting and to find the answers quick and easily. All right, the last thing I want to show you is you can always go to your calculator here, change your view to scientific, And if you put in a decimal, let's put in a decimal of 192, and then click on binary and it'll convert it for you. So 11000, 11 and then 6 zeros. Thanks for joining, and please subscribe, and if you have any comments or suggestions, please go ahead and drop me a note. Thanks. Bye.